Welcome everyone to our webinar, Cryptonite, 7 Tactics to Nail PR for Crypto and Blockchain. As a very quick note, we are recording this session and we'll be sending it out to everyone who signed up. So let's just get started. Today, we'll be talking crypto and blockchain. We'll go over specific tactics to get our crypto or blockchain initiative noticed, and then we'll bring in the experts to give you all of the opportunity to ask very specific questions related to your initiative. We are running this specific webinar because many companies have come to us asking specifically about how to approach PR for crypto and blockchain. And we understand the answers are very unique to the sector. And if you're wondering what you're going to get out of this webinar, well, today we'll talk about the ways in which PR can be the magic ingredient in growing your crypto and blockchain company, as well as the types of content that boost your SEO and can get you noticed. We will get to discuss how to find, pitch, and charm the top blockchain influencers, as well as the reasons why social media is the natural home for blockchain and crypto for building a community organically. And finally, top tips for contacting journalists and getting media attention. So stay with us. But very quickly, before that, my name is Eddie Arrieta, president and co-founder at Publicize and Espacio. At Publicize, we work with startups from a wide range of blockchain industries, including health tech, ed tech, SaaS, renewable energies, and more. These companies come from all over the world, and we focus on PR strategies and tactics that are specifically geared towards growth. If you want to learn more about this, check out the resources we have just shared on the chat section. But let's get to business on this very specific topic. Crypto and blockchain, is it dead? Well, early press suggested crypto and blockchain was a fad. So are blockchain and crypto dead? I can already feel our experts be giggling a little. Bitcoin was definitely going to continually decline. It rather, and then rallied up and is now at 50 to 20% higher. Some speculated this was a result of an April's Fool's joke. What's important about this is how the market is still at the very early stages of its understanding of the technology. Let me talk to you a little bbit about Jamie Dimon. He's the Chief Executive Officer and Chairman of JP Morgan. In 2017, he called Bitcoin stupid and dangerous and warned that if we caught a trader buying or selling, he would fire them in a second. This is what Jamie Dimon said in 2017. Less than 2 years later, and with the context of renewed hopes for Bitcoin, JP Morgan launched JPM Coin, which really highlights the potential long-term threat blockchain and cryptocurrencies pose to traditional financial players. So what do we make out of this? Well, think about this. A recent blog from VX3 Media compared the crypto journey to a dysfunctional childhood actor. In the words of this publication, we've had the glitz and glamour of the early years, and now we're onto the difficult teenage phase. Among all this volatility, a renewed focus on a PR strategy can help you push through this phase, whether you are a small or established blockchain or crypto initiative. So how exactly can crypto businesses still get positive press and reach new people in such an uncertain time? Let us go over 7 tactics on how you can get started. If you're curious to know more about this topic, don't forget to visit our resources page shared on the chat of this webinar, or connect with us over Twitter or LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that we send this over to you. We have just released a page specifically dedicated to PR for crypto and blockchain. It's got plenty of valuable content there for you on this very topic. So let's get started. None of this is rocket science. You will see that building the basics in the right way will maximize your potential. So we will go over these tactics one by one, and you can get started on them today. So the first thing to do is to admit to yourself that you need PR and marketing. And let's get very specific on how this plays out for crypto. We see this so much with crypto funds. They often approach us wanting to get in TechCrunch, which is a worthy goal that requires building the proper foundations to achieve. Even if there is a perception that Bitcoin is not using PR or marketing, well, guess what? Bitcoin did and does use PR. It does it in a way befitting its industry. For years now, the mainstream press has pigeonholed crypto and blockchain companies. It hasn't been easy for most people to understand the technology, coupled with the fact that press has given most attention to shady ICOs and market volatility. As a company, it is key to see why PR and marketing have been a specific problem to crypto and blockchain companies. Accepting this will translate into a clear narrative, a strong position in an industry with an already fragile and fluctuating reputation. So remember the key takeaway here: take the first step and understand the importance of your PR and marketing strategy, specifically for the crypto and blockchain industry. Now, you're probably familiar with this concept, as any new technology that eventually becomes successfully adopted generally follows this bell curve, with inventors, and innovators starting the trend. Early adopters, follow next. Then the early majority, late majority, and finally the laggards, or those who have to upgrade because the market no longer produces it or sells what they used to have. The crypto and blockchain industry is still in the early adopter phase, and as we move along the curve, we will need to do more education. We'll need you to understand this very specifically. This is where you are at, and this is where we need to be. There needs to be a shift, and to do that, you will need to make some changes on your communication strategy. So get back to basics, and let's not talk about white papers just yet. But let's get back to basics. As a crypto startup, certain channels are out of bounds. You cannot use digital advertisements like Facebook ads, which means you might not even know who you are trying to target, right? Well, kind of. While crypto companies face unique challenges, many of the same PR and marketing best practices still apply. So when I'm talking about basics, I really mean it. Getting this right will mean solid progress can be made. People researching companies in this industry will form their opinion based on what they find online, and we cannot find this. So on your website, you need to make sure you created an engaging UX-focused website with everything working smoothly and no dodgy bugs or glitches. Think about your brand as well. Have you worked on a consistent and well-thought-out brand and design? Is your message clear? Can you explain your purpose to anyone inside or outside of the crypto world? Have you researched your audience using data available in Google Analytics or on website heat maps platforms such as Hotjar, for example? As a crypto and blockchain company, recognizing where the conversation is at and being able to engage with that is essential. Because the hype is over and the stories of failure are numerous, you need to work twice as hard to position yourself effectively. So the fact that some channels are not available to you means that you need to make sure that those that are available to you contain an intelligible description of why you exist. As you're thinking about all of this, you will quickly realize that the best way to explain and bridge the understanding of your solution with the market is potentially to start writing. I'm talking about quality content. So let's work on the white paper. And this one is the first, or one of the first things you should do in order to articulate your product and enhance your credibility. And not only this, it can also act as a useful source of content, allowing you to place a lot of this content throughout your website. This in turn will help your website's SEO. As you get started with this, remember, why are you doing it? People do not trust the blockchain and crypto industry. You need to break through that reality. So your written content, or all of the content that you are producing should answer all of the basic audience questions like pricing, contracts, legal issues, as well as providing the abstract mission and vision, the purpose, with the tangible backbone it needs, how you are going to make your mark on the crypto world. Once you've done that, don't put the pen away just yet. Creating content is one of the most tried and tested means of getting the word out there. Quality content will play into your SEO strategy. We've mentioned that, your social media strategy. And if you don't have social media channels, you need to get them. All this content will make you more appealing to influencers and journalists. The crypto and blockchain audiences have a very low tolerance for BS. That's why you need to form a relationship with them that is based on trust and providing value. The real opportunity, however, lies with those audiences who are unfamiliar with crypto or have simply assumed it's not for them. By educating these people and speaking in plain English, you can convince them of the value of your product and also the value of blockchain and crypto as a whole. So remember, this is a unique moment for crypto and blockchain. So take the opportunity. Your writing is not just good for SEO, it's the main tool to bridge your understanding of the technology and its applications, as futuristic as they may be, with the audience's understanding of your product. As highlighted on all of this, you can probably guess that you need to consider influencers. You need to reach out to journalists. This is one of the best ways to get positive promotion for your ICO or your crypto initiative. You want to look at thought leadership pieces, guest articles on partner sites or different publications, press releases, the list goes on and on. If you are going for industry-specific publications, you need to know exactly how to make your company compelling and address exactly how it seeks to fill a gap in the market. Getting the attention of influencers is a science. So before you go contacting TechCrunch, I really recommend you taking a look at our pitching to journalist toolkit, which will take you through exactly what kind of email you need to write to get the attention of a busy journalist. We're putting the link in the chat as we speak. It is very important to keep in mind that most journalists are not specialized only on blockchain and crypto, and that the community does not only follow writers. An influencer, as we have presented in previous webinars, is someone with a platform and an audience. Let me repeat that. An influencer is someone with a platform and an audience. So think about it. Anyone with a great Twitter community has a platform and an audience to get your message across. So you can find this in Twitter, chat rooms, Reddit, Bitcoin talks, conferences, and more. So remember, consider influencers, as they will be some of the first ones to adopt or reject your solution. You can access our list of top 100 blockchain influencers as well, which we are sharing once again on our chat right now. And it consists of a list of journalists, bloggers, Twitter personalities, and YouTubers. It's a great tool to start looking into those influencers. Remember, someone with a platform and someone with an audience. We are sharing with you the list of top 100 blockchain influencers. Now, get outside. You are the point of contact. We've talked a lot about how you can utilize digital media channels to maximize your ICO's digital footprint, but let's take a step outside for a moment. And yes, we do mean physically outside. This is basic. In an industry where trust is key, it's fundamental, hiding and avoiding social interactions and networking is really not an option. Historically, if you think about it, crypto promotion has been fueled by word of mouth. And even though digital channels have stolen the spotlight in recent years, attending networking events, crypto and blockchain conferences, and even digital marketing conferences can really aid the process of getting attention for your company. You'll be in direct contact with those in the crypto world who don't have that same learning curve ahead of them in order to buy, as well as investors and VCs. So it's a great place to meet a lot of people. You need the buy-in of the wider community. Wider acceptance will be driven by the respect and recognition of the blockchain and crypto community. So get outside. Now, of course, considering the media, it's going to be very important. While you're looking into sharing your initiative, and your narrative with others at events, through your site and other channels, it's clear that understanding what's happening around the market is crucial to your success. Media monitoring is a great tool to keep track of what competitors are doing and what your positioning on the market is. Google alerts and following key influencers online will help you get this done. As you become better at this, you should be able to identify potential threats, but more importantly, coverage opportunities. As suggested with everything that we've talked about today, we all need to know where the community is at. You need their blessing. So include in your exercise Reddit, Twitter, and any of the different chat rooms as we've mentioned before. So be aware that, as discussed, the media can sometimes project crypto as a dirty word. This can even sometimes get very reductive. Blockchain is good, crypto is bad. But you need to be aware of the current media perception, as this is everything in influence and the thoughts and opinions of your audience. As well as this, media monitoring is crucial when checking out on your competitors. You can use websites like BuzzSumo to check out what articles are trending and what your competitors are both producing and following. So remember the key takeaway here: monitor media, find opportunities or threats, and act upon them. So let's get now to our pro tip for this webinar. Social media is your secret sauce. You have probably guessed this from everything that we've been talking about, but we need to know that you cannot advertise on social media. We've said it before. In fact, we couldn't even promote this webinar despite the fact that it's very educational and very legal. As we have mentioned before, you need to branch out of the early adopter bubble, but you need their sign off. So make sure you're addressing social media responsibly. Word of mouth is powerful, and social media is the word of mouth of the digital world. As you increase your social proof, the members of the community will, in plain English, check your Twitter and LinkedIn. You are not Satoshi Nakamoto, so you cannot create a fictional character to do this. You need to put yourself out there, and you need to put it through social media. And we need to understand social media from a very practical perspective. Any digital forum that gives you the possibility to engage with your target community is a great place to be at. Once again, Reddit, Twitter, Bitcoin Talk, and different chat rooms will be the first places to look into. And we can ask our experts here in the panel what this would be about and how to do this. But before we get there, if you want to write the perfect crypto press release and find the most important influencers within the blockchain community, please download our Crypto on Blockchain PR Toolkit. You can get it from us after this webinar. We will be putting the link in the chat room if we haven't already done so. If you, for whatever reason, cannot get it through any of these channels, just let us know through Twitter. Let us know through any of the other channels where Publicize is communicating with everyone in the company. But before we get to ask our experts some questions, let me quickly introduce each one of them. So to begin with, we have Patrick Quinn. He's currently the editorial director here at Publicize. He's passionate about getting great stories out there and building and maintaining strong relationships. You can also follow him on Twitter and add him on LinkedIn if you have some extra questions for him. And we will also have with us today Pat Rapid. He's currently writing for the Sociable 150 Sec, and he's a contributor to Entrepreneur Magazine with extensive experience in all topics, blockchain and crypto. You can also follow him on Twitter and also add him on LinkedIn. We have some questions that we have prepared for them. And as we are going over this, I hope that everyone who's listening can start sending us their questions. So let's bring the panelists on screen and let's directly ask them these questions. For Patrick Quinn, we're going to be asking some questions regarding marketing and how to address crypto. And for Pat Rabin, we'll be much more specific on crypto and blockchain. So Pat and Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. I see that we have Pat first with us, and then we will find Patrick very shortly.
Hi there. How's it going, Eddie?
Thank you both for joining us once again. Patrick, let me get started with you with one of the questions that we have already prepared. What is, in your opinion, the biggest challenge you think communicators can encounter when pitching crypto and blockchain stories?
Yeah, well, I think we're at a more mature stage right now of cryptocurrencies and blockchain than we were in kind of like the serotonin-fueled 2017, where it was kind of like a Wild West in the media with talking about cryptos, where everyone would try to stand out by just attaching crypto, blockchain, to anything that seemed unique to them. And for media, it was kind of like there was a lot of obscurity. A lot of people didn't really understand the science behind it. There weren't a lot of explanations with the technical in some cases. And really, it was almost a lottery, I guess, for companies in terms of, if you were able to kind of catch someone's eye at the right time, then you could have success in the media. But these days, you're not going to get by just by kind of regurgitating buzzwords or just speaking in very grandiose terms. You need to be a lot more focused and practical in terms of what your mission actually is in the blockchain space, how you're actually going to make a difference. And I think. Yeah, again, the era of just kind of speaking in super hypey terms and basically taking advantage of the general ignorance about the technology and about what exactly this is. Media is wiser to this stuff now, so if you can't really explain practically what it is that you're doing in very simple and basic terms, then you're going to fail.
Great, thank you, Patrick. I think it's a great answer. Be practical. Is what I mentioned, but also that all the buzzwords are over or the hype is gone. So I guess this is perfect for Pat. Pat, one of the questions that we have is you're a big advocate for blockchain technology. And now that the hype is over, what are you hoping to see in the near future happen to the industry? Now we're getting into the real turf here. Like, what are you hoping to see there, Pat?
Well, the hype being over, Eddie, is actually it's a great thing for the industry, because it was just it just took professionals away from the nuts and bolts of building the industry, building blockchain, building crypto. What needs to happen next is, and what's been lacking is regulatory clarity. So it's a nascent technology, it's a nascent industry, and there needs to be, the foundation needs to be there for companies to develop. And so it's up to the regulators, and in fairness to them, it's totally new to them as well. So there needs to be change in that respect. We've seen some measures taken in some jurisdictions in 2018, and we've seen the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, even this month come out with guidelines, but they still don't go far enough. There's also a question in terms of the US. Securities law goes back to the 1930s, the 1940s. There was no mention of blockchain back then, right? So it's not fit for purpose. And some politicians in the US and people in the industry, for sure, believe that it's necessary to have separate regulations, separate legislation.
Great. Thank you so much, Pat, for that. Patrick, I want to have a follow-up question to what you were mentioning about being practical. And being practical sometimes becomes difficult because you tend to put yourself in the position of the other companies, and then you end up using those same buzzwords that you're mentioning. What would be some once again, practical advice from you to stay away from these buzzwords? And you say stay practical, but when you're pitching this story, how do you in action really stay away from falling into that trap?
Well, I would say the buzzwords exist for a reason, because most of them actually have kind of a shortcut to understanding what the technology is all about. So I think when it gets problematic is when it becomes a case of just trying to get so many in at the same time, where it's really becomes, you can see very clearly that it's far too ambitious to be actually a realistic thing. So you can use a buzzword, certainly you're going to have to, in fact, if you're in this space. But if it's not kind of, if in a pitch, for example, you're not practically unpacking exactly what is behind that buzzword, if it's, for example, something like identity as a market, if you just throw that word around there, you might just think it makes you sound sophisticated, and you can accomplish all these different things with through the blockchain. But I think the real value is being able to show exactly what that buzzword means in the context of what your business is doing.
Great, thank you so much. Pat, I have also a follow-up question for you, which is what we had for you prepared. A lot of companies and you're a journalist, so you get a lot of companies doing what Patrick is mentioning, which is that they're putting a lot of buzzwords, they're putting a lot of these things. So all of these companies that are pitching stories, what is a quick signal that you can get that this company might not be completely legit? You were saying, hey, I'm really glad that the hype is over. But when you get pitched a story, what do you say? What do you see quickly that triggers that alarm?
Well, I think, Eddie, that any story should be an extension of the white paper, and it all goes back to the white paper. The white paper is the cornerstone. With the white paper, a company and a project can establish credibility, but it doesn't cover all the details, and that's where your opportunity in terms of writing is to extend beyond, into information that's not contained in the white paper. White papers normally don't cover, the numbers, and that's the opportunity. There's an opportunity there. You build on the white paper, but obviously the foundation stone is the white paper. It has to be credible, and then any consideration of the project in terms of additional writing beyond that, builds on from the substance of the white paper.
Great, thank you so much, Pat. Patrick, I have a question that's regarding the size of publications, and from your experience, there are different tiers of them. There are really large ones as well as there are very small ones. Daniela asks us, is this the same for the blockchain industry? Are there tier 1 and tier 3 and different tiers of publications? How would you classify this?
Well, I would say the short answer is yes. There are different tiers of crypto publications. However, I would say that with the nature of blockchain and crypto, you can have a much more measurable impact, I think, in what we would consider kind of a lower tier publication than you can in kind of like analogous media. So I would say, while yes, there are certainly sites that are followed that have more visits, that get more traffic than some places and others. In terms of an idea, a concept really catching fire, I think we find that it can really happen in a range of in different strata of media.
Great, and I think I have a great question from Rudy, and I think this question is for even both of you, because Rudy's asking, where is the best place to start with reaching out to the media to win publicity for your crypto? So my question for Pat would be, where is the best place to engage with the community, especially writers like yourself, journalists like yourself, who are writing about these topics? Where's the best place to find you?
Well, I mean, the crypto space, Eddie, is still niche, and certainly is niche in terms of publication. But there are a variety of publications there, that cover the topic. They may be industry specific, and then there are some that cover technology in a more broader sense. So there are a lot of options there, and it depends. It depends on the project, and it depends the stage the project is at. It depends, if you're at a very early stage and pitching to early stage investors, they're likely to be techie by nature, and so they're probably involved in the space to a certain extent, or at least following the space. So I would imagine it depends on the project, as regards which option is best.
Great. And Patrick, what would you say about that? Where would you get started from your experience?
I would get started, I think, the most important story that a company tells is the one that tells itself. So I think, I think sometimes when people get in a room and they're working on a project, working on a concept that's going to change the world, they are able to understand each other on their own terms. But I think you need to be able to, and it's not a matter of, can you explain this to your grandmother so much as it is, can you explain this to the C-suite, explain this to the type of people who are going to actually be attracting your business. Because again, we're at a point where people in the C-suite are able to they understand this stuff a bit more, but they can't go all the way. So I think sometimes you get very ambitious about what you're trying to solve as a crypto company. And you think that it's very clear. It's very clear to the 8, 15, 20 people in the room who are working on it with you. But if you can't explain it to somebody outside of your organization in a way that is comprehensible, that is the first step as far as I'm concerned. And then once you do that, then I would say, again, going back to the different strata of blockchain media, expressing what your concept is in a very simple term, give context to it. I look at some specific pieces in the media that I've seen recently. One actually came from my colleague, Pat Rabbit, where essentially, tying a very major story. So it was about essentially the Julian Assange story and how all this money has been raised in terms of his defense team through Bitcoin. So again, this is a story of global interest, of global intrigue, and it's one that really touches on a lot of very fundamental values to any person, really. And I think he did a really nice job of kind of showing how this is where we're seeing it in the real world. This is like the real life. You can feel it, you can touch it, the tactile experience of blockchain. And I think the more that a company is able to do that with the story that they're telling, the more effective they're going to be in the media.
Great, thank you. Pat, I have a question for you, and this is related to cryptos specifically. There are just, when first Bitcoin came out, it was the only one. And now we have, I don't even know, I'm gonna say thousands. But
Sure.
Julian is asking, how do you stand out as a new crypto? How to create a message that can grab the attention? What do you think is what's helping differentiate now this new wave of cryptos? What would you say it's helping differentiate that?
I think that projects that seek to collaborate with industry, rather than, in the early phase, and even right now, we have a lot of projects, and there are technologists behind them, techie people, but they're kind of in a bubble. Now there are some projects that are breaking out from that, because at the end of the day, it's an early stage industry, but at some stage, it's got to have tangible results in terms of functionality. And so I always look towards projects that are building relationships with existing companies and existing industries, because that's where you're likely to see proper application. And
proper application is great. Where did you see from the clients that you've seen, Patrick, what potential applications specifically for blockchain? And at Publicize, we've worked with even renewable energies, but what are some of the ones that you feel have a lot of potential, especially when contacting media?
Yeah, well, I think I would say that the potential applications for blockchain, it's kind of hard to kind of catalog in one conversation, really. But I would say that it's limitless would maybe be a stretch. I don't know if Pat would agree or not. He maybe disagree. But anyways, I would say the ones that have a lot of potential, the ones that deal with identity, the ones that deal with security, the ones that deal with not requiring a middleman for some business purpose, because I think a lot of times that slows down transactions when there's money going between two different parties. Anything that kind of falls into that realm, I think that that's when we're talking about being practical, actually seeing where this can work in the real world. Those are the first three that really come to mind. I'm sure there are more that Pat might want to touch on as well.
You remind me.
And if we break it down, and this is often said, okay, it's a nascent technology, but actually it's been around for a long time. And some people, the cynics, would say it's a glorified database. Now we have databases, and databases work perfectly. And in truth, it is a database, but it's a database that's immutable, and it brings transparency. And so anybody in any industry can look at their own industry and seek to solve problems in terms of, will an immutable ledger solve an issue? So there's a different take on it. There are applications probably in most industries. Of course, with the over exuberance, sometimes there's people have felt that it's a panacea. It's not a panacea. There are specific uses.
Great, thank you so much, Pat and Patrick. I have a question that's not necessarily related only to blockchain and cryptos. It's mostly related to stories in general. And this comes from Julian. Julian is asking, how different and disruptive and memorable do you have to be to get press? Do you in general just have to be an amazing company that has a lot of great things, or is there a middle ground in there?
Well, that's a great question. I would say being memorable alone isn't enough anymore. So I think that's that's kind of what people were going for, I think, in past years when, it was kind of like the, just trying to catch attention for anything kind of thing, where it's like, you want to use blockchain and have the most radical kind of application for it. So I think, I don't know if that's the approach necessarily. I think really what it comes down to is how effective is it? How good is your technology? How sound is the technology? Is it based on good principles? Is there proof of concept behind it? Do you have a broad following, a lot of adopters who are already seeing the benefits of this technology? That's what really matters, I think, at this point, at this stage of the game.
Great. Pat, this question comes from Connor to you, and it's related to and it's mostly out of curiosity. Do most journalists cover either crypto or blockchain, or do you find that what is kind of like the split from what Patrick was mentioning, it seems limitless. So what are the limits? What are the categorizations there?
I mean, I certainly do. I mean, it probably varies. And for me personally, I see them as the same thing. Now, there has been a tainting, and the public perception in some groups as regards crypto and Bitcoin, as opposed to, we'll say, the broader context of blockchain technology, has been sullied, because, and there have been, in fairness, there has been fraudulent practice with certain ICOs, and because it's an unregulated space, and so that to me it's a natural process. So for me, Eddie, to me, I cover both. To me, they're both the same. In essence, they're the same thing, but obviously application can go in all sorts of directions.
Great, and I will ask this question to Patrick in particular, and it's regarding this conversation that we were having initially about early adopters and social media versus mainstream unestablished media. Is this a question? If I'm a startup and I'm working on this, is this a question of me splitting time between the two, or doing one before the other? This question comes from Ben. So what is the split in there? So once again, early adopters that are in social media and are prone to take on the technology versus going mainstream. How can we play that dynamic, I guess?
Well, I would say, if you're going for easy wins, I would say that the lower tier media is probably the place to start. And again, it's not like it's not the same thing as, I think, other industries. I think that's one thing that blockchain maybe still stands out, that something can really catch fire in a lower tier publication than in a higher tier one. I think social media influencers, they can have an impact, but as long as you're strategic with it. I think, if you're a a security token that's tokenizing real estate, for example, I'm trying to think of an endorser that wouldn't be effective, like having some sort of Instagram model who is just, someone who travels around or something. That's maybe not the person, to get for you. So if you're very focused and strategic with it, I think, tapping into social media, tapping into some of the resources that are there, like influencers, can really give a PR campaign some legs, and give an overall PR, infrastructure some legs, really. So I would say those are two places. I think that's where two good places to begin with, giving your energy, and then once it gets to a certain point, then that's when you can really attract the bigger tier publications. When it's like, oh, all of a sudden, this project has 500,000 followers or whatever, or it's secured X, Y, or Z contract. I think once you have those kind of lower wins first, it kind of builds your ammo in order to kind of build up to those higher, more sought after publications.
And Pat, let me follow up on that specific point, because that's a conversation that we were having, in that also the companies that are using the blockchain technology, are maybe going a bit more mainstream now than they were in the past. Do you see, and I guess it's the same question for you, do you see it as one before the other, or do you see it as both at the same time? How do you see that dynamic?
To me, Eddie, it's, oh, sorry, that was from, that question
it's for you, Pat. It's for you, sorry.
Okay. To me, Eddie, it's a natural progression. There's been a lot of resistance to crypto and blockchain, but the narrative is slowly changing. You know, you had the industry incumbents, and I'm thinking specifically in terms of the banking industry, you know, that trashed blockchain and crypto. And then the narrative changed to, well, blockchain is acceptable, but Bitcoin isn't. And now in the last 2 months, you've had JP Morgan come out with their own cryptocurrency. These are the guys that said that cryptocurrency is rubbish. So the industry is probably not a toddler anymore. It's probably an adolescent. There's a process to follow here. Yeah, to me, it's entirely logical.
Great. Patrick, let me get now into this is a more difficult topic. This is talking about, you know, negative PR, negative press, and skepticism. So Jeff asks, how can crypto projects convince their users and investors that they are legitimate through their media communications? Unfortunately, the industry has seen issues with scams in the past. How can valid coins and valid startups overcome skepticism that sometimes comes with the tag of crypto?
Yeah, well, I think, again, you know, there was everything in 2017 that we saw was all drilled in, like, you know, based in serotonin. People love that, you know, kind of feeling, that rush of seeing the Bitcoin prices go up and everything. And I think everyone was trying to kind of touch kind of fire there for what was happening. So I think nowadays it goes back to what I've said before. I mean, I think explaining what you're doing in practical terms, can you show that it's actually an effective technology? Can you actually show that this solution is actually better than what's already there? Because there are some cases where, you know what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thing. So it's like, what, you know, why bring in a crypto solution here when what we have right now is perfectly adequate without problems? So I think establishing that there is a problem of one that you're trying to solve, and if you are working so hard just to establish that the problem exists, then I think it's where you're starting to get into maybe scam territory. So it has to be overly evident that there is a problem that you are actually solving and that you are capable of solving it.
Right. Pat, as a journalist, how do you, and this question comes from Jordan, as a journalist, how do you cover crypto blockchain companies or their break without attaching a bias, whether positive or negative, that is attached to these kind of industries? How do you stay, unbiased?
Agnostic.
Yeah, sure. Agnostic.
It's a good question. It's a good question. And I guess you can apply this to journalism in general. I mean, you know, we all have inherent bias, whether we're conscious of it or not. I try to approach it from an agnostic point of view or a neutral point of view. I hope that I do. I'm not quite sure if I can give an answer beyond that, really.
Patrick, do you have this problem with your clients? Are there some clients that you're like, geez, it sounds like a scam, or not your clients, but projects that come across them? How do you overcome your own, your own emotions to look at, you know, the potential stories from a much sober perspective before sending it to a publication?
Yeah, I'm pretty sensitive to this one because I think I do usually come with a lot of skepticism. I think at first when I encounter a company or a new project for the first time, just because there's so many people who have gotten fleeced in this, people who I've seen kind of firsthand that kind of bought into the frenzy of what was going on. So I think in terms of, you know, but I think you can almost go too far with that kind of level of skepticism, where there are cases, in fact, where there's remarkable things happening thanks to blockchain technology, where it's actually a viable solution to what's going on. So I think every person, whether you're someone who is kind of pro crypto, pro blockchain, you have to look at it the same way as you look at anything, really. Like, what is the benefit of this? Kind of really with a level of kind of understanding and curiosity. So I think when clients are not able to handle that level of curiosity, I guess, and when it's at a point where it's kind of irking them, I think that's kind of where we run into the problem. So I think If you are a blockchain company and you're solving some kind of problem, I think you should welcome that curiosity. You should really be willing to kind of peel back the curtain and show kind of what's happening.
Right. I have a really good question actually from Connor. I'm gonna say with Bitcoin, which are the biggest influencer publications, specific to Pat, but I think it'd be great to ask both of you. So let me start with Pat. Pat, where are the places where you feed yourself with information? Where do you find your news? Where do you learn about the industry?
It's a good question, Eddie. It's a difficult one to answer, to be honest with you, because I write. Well, I don't write exclusively about crypto. I branch into technology generally as well. But I still tend, because I actually have an interest in the space, I tend to review whether it's the niche publications or publications that are sort of covering technology on a broader scale.
Can you give me some names?
Yeah, I mean, industry-specific ones would be Cointelegraph, CoinDesk, CCN, Bitcoinist, and then on a more broader level, you would have Forbes cover a lot of stuff in that area. Yeah, and I guess it depends on the project as well, and in terms of the coverage with the broader publications as to whether it's of interest to them or something's of interest to them.
Patrick, where do you get your stuff from?
Yeah, I would say a lot of the ones Pat already mentioned, but I would say I tend to kind of at this point, again, with the skepticism, I think that I go into it. I think a lot of times I am going to a lot of the technology focused publications more than the ones that are kind of crypto focused. So a lot of times Wired has great coverage. MIT Technology Review talks about it at length. Publications like Scientific American at times are covering it. So yeah, I think some of those kind of higher tier technology publications, a lot of times you have journalists who are really kind of onto a story in a very kind of unbiased way, and I think a lot of times you're able to incorporate a lot of different voices in the blockchain community in those publications.
Awesome, and I think we are coming to an end here. If there are any more questions, please put them in the chat section. Once again, you can find Pat and Patrick both on LinkedIn and also Twitter. But this week I was talking to someone, and their company is called Fuergy, and Fuergy tries to optimize consumption and maximize efficiency, and they are using AI and blockchain. And I was so excited because I never thought that you could apply any of that to blockchain. So of course I'm very ignorant about the whole technology, and that's why initially I was saying, what are the applications? Like, what do you see in the future? And I know there is a lot of the stuff coming with, the regulations and whatnot. But in terms of the conversation that you were mentioning, Pat and Patrick, both of you, regarding the blockchain or the technology's interaction with different industries, which sorts of those interactions do you find will be very attractive and very engaging with the mainstream? And I was mentioning Fuergy just because I know the whole climate change thing is gonna be really big soon. So let's start with Pat. Where do you see some of those opportunities?
Sometimes, Eddie, a new technology just doesn't come up on its own. Often it interacts with another, and I certainly see that as being the case in terms of blockchain. And we have 5G coming as it's coming up as a new technology, and the Internet of Things. And I actually see those three as being interlinked. The reason being, 5G is going to carry the data for the Internet of Things. We're facing a world very shortly that's just going to be overloaded with sensors gathering data. They already talk that we've got too much data. Well, I believe that we haven't seen anything yet. And in order to trade that data, there are crypto projects and blockchain projects that can work with that. So I see those three as definitely interacting.
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I think that's a really good point about kind of incorporating these other kind of fourth industrial revolution technologies in the way that they can kind of intermingle and kind of produce really fascinating returns. I think another thing to consider is kind of the world that has opened up to people, to certain people who have been shut out of certain things as a result of cryptocurrency. I think about things like real estate investment. I know I touched on that before, but this is something that, generally speaking, when you talk about investing, you talk about returns in investing. And traditionally speaking, over time, real estate is some of the most valuable returns, but it's something that you really need a lot of money in order to invest in, traditionally speaking. If you want to buy a property in New York City, you need a few $1 million to throw around. But this is something where if I'm someone with just a few $1,000s in the bank and there's a property, a very expensive property that's I'm involved in and see a return on. So I would say that's something, I think it's one thing to talk about, ICOs and different coins that, talking about them as currency, but there's an investment case to be made, I think, when you talk about it. And I think real estate is a very compelling one that I think, again, is a very it's democratizing this kind of opportunity in order to invest in real estate and other high ticket assets, fine art being another one. So that's one I think gets people excited.
Thank you. I'm Pat. I'm gonna maybe abuse a little bit your expertise because when I saw that the JP Morgan had their own crypto, I was like, oh, okay, it's done. Like all of the big players are gonna get into it, and then it's done. It's done for the small guys that are in their basement or in the garage, whatever, in Eastern Europe or in Medellin or anywhere in the world. Is that the case? Is it the case that these large companies now caught up to it and now it's finished for everybody else? So how do you see that, Pat?
Well, the narrative has changed, Eddie, and whatever may happen in terms of speculation, and there's a large speculative interest in cryptocurrency, and that can go in all sorts of directions. And I don't think anybody can really truly predict it. But the technology itself, I'd be very confident that it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. And the reason that those guys are investing at that level for a reason, they're not going to waste some money. They can see where things are headed.
Yeah, when you see the smart money going into things, I think it's kind of a certain indication of where a certain industry is headed. And now that we're seeing kind of like these blue blood smart money people really piling into it, I think it's very indicative of, like Pat said, of where things are going.
So for both of you, I guess you would say there is still a lot of coverage that will happen in the blockchain and crypto industry, and that companies that are getting into it should already know that coverage, we can get coverage. What would you say is your advice to them, Pat? Just to end.
You mean in terms of somebody starting a project, a digital token related project? I guess, and this goes back to something that Patrick referred to earlier, and we talked about the froth in 2017. It's just a question of getting back to basics. I mean, if somebody has a project that they have a high degree of confidence in, and that they've thought it through, and it solves a problem, and not just any problem, but a real world problem, then that's a good foundation to start from. And the ICO market, because of regulation and issues with regulation, it's died down, but that's going to come back. There's an issue with financing right now, but it's just a matter of time. We just need regulatory clarity.
Patrick, would you say that from the projects that you're working on, you see potential for coverage on them and continue growth on that area in terms of coverage specifically?
Yeah, I don't think it's any different from any other kind of breakthrough technology. I referred to the fourth industrial revolution before, and as Pat said, if it's a technology, as long any technology, whether it's crypto, whether it's IoT, whether it's AI, machine learning, if it is credibly solving some kind of problem that does exist at some kind of scale, there's going to be space for it in the media. There's going to be space to tell that story. But in the absence of that, if you're simply just trying to make a buck off of suddenly having some idea that seems unique or just sounds like it hasn't been done before, you really have the question of, are we solving a problem? Are we helping someone do something? Are we providing a service of some kind? And if the answer is no, then I think the whole project needs to be reconsidered, because it's not gonna succeed in the media.
All right, Patrick, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll make sure that we tag both of you on all of our social media. Thank you so much, everyone who is listening. Stick around for just a little bit, as we are going to be presenting you guys with an option for this week and probably the upcoming weeks. Because of this webinar, we are going to be offering to every single one of you who have downloaded this webinar or who are watching right now, a option to get a free assessment with us, a free consultation with our crypto professionals. Stick around. Once again, click on the free request for PR assessment, write to us on info@publicize.co. And once we send you this webinar, you can also sign up for that specific assessment. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and until the next time.